He sent the text at 2:47 p.m. In a meeting, babe. Call you later. Love you. I read it once. Then I read it again. Then I looked up from my phone. And there he was. Not in a meeting. Not even close to a meeting. He was holding a door open. That kind of door, the heavy glass kind with a brass handle. The kind that belongs to places where the price tags face inward. And she walked through it ahead of him like she'd done it before. Like it was familiar. Like he was familiar. His hand found the small of her back the moment she crossed the threshold. Not a brush. Not an accident. A placement. Deliberate. Comfortable. Practiced. I was standing 20 feet away. On the same street. Holding a bag of lunch I had packed for him that morning. Still warm. The pasta he asked for every time. The garlic bread he always said I made better than any restaurant. I looked down at the bag in my hand. I looked back up at the glass storefront. And what I did in the next 60 seconds. Rewrote the ending of both our stories. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come in like a wave. It doesn't knock the air out of you. It doesn't make you grab something for support. It arrives like cold water rising, slowly, from the feet up. And by the time you feel it at your chest, you've already been standing in it for a while. That's what this was. I didn't move. The city moved around me. Taxis. Footsteps. Someone's music bleeding from a car window. A woman with a stroller. A courier on a bike nearly clipping my elbow and muttering something as he passed. I didn't move. I watched. Through the storefront glass, floor to ceiling, crystal clear, the kind of window designed so passers-by could see exactly what happened inside. I watched them approach a display case. The sales associate was already there. Already smiling. Already reaching for something beneath the glass. She'd seen them before. I knew it in the way you know things that your brain hasn't caught up to yet. Something in the ease of it. No awkward introductions. No explaining what they were looking for. The associate just knew. She pulled out a velvet tray. He leaned down to look. And she, this woman in the fitted dress, with the long hair and the easy laugh, she leaned into his shoulder. Not dramatically, just naturally. The way a woman leans into a man when she has earned that proximity. When she has been given it, over and over, until it belongs to her. I stood on the sidewalk. The lunch bag was getting heavy. I became aware of my own breathing. Slow. Even. Deliberate, though I hadn't made it so. I became aware of my hands. I became aware of the ring on my left hand. His ring, the one he had placed there with shaking hands and wet eyes 18 months ago on a quiet Tuesday evening at a restaurant neither of us could really afford at the time. And we had laughed about the bill, and I had worn it every day since without once thinking about what it meant for it to not be there. I looked at the ring. I looked through the glass. I looked at the velvet tray the associate was holding toward them. And something in me, some final, fragile thing that had been quietly holding the shape of who I thought we were, went completely, utterly still. Not broken. Still. Like the moment before a decision. I took one breath. Long quiet. All the way down. I took out my phone. I opened the camera. I held it up. Steady. So steady. Steadier than I had any right to be. And I took 3 photographs through the glass. Time-stamped. Clear. Then I put my phone in my pocket. I looked at the bag in my hand one final time. And I turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I simply walked. Like a woman who had somewhere very important to be. Let me take you back. Because you need to understand what he had. Before you understand what he chose to lose. I grew up in a house where love was not a performance. It was infrastructure. It was my mother up before anyone else, quietly making the kind of decisions that kept 4 people alive and fed and present. Not because anyone applauded her for it, but because she understood that the most important work is often the most invisible. She taught me that. She taught me that a woman's power isn't in how loud she speaks. It's in what she does when no one is watching. I carried that with me through university, through a master's degree in finance that I funded mostly myself, through 4 years at a firm where I was frequently the youngest person in the room, often the only woman, and almost always underestimated. I was used to being underestimated. I had learned to let people believe what they wanted. Then I would show them the numbers. I started my own consulting firm at 28. No investors. No family money. Just a client list I had built through 2 years of being relentlessly, almost embarrassingly reliable. I returned every call. I delivered everything early. I never oversold what I could do. It was small. It was mine. It was growing. And then I met him. A conference. The kind where everyone is trying to seem more successful than they are and nobody's really listening to the panels. He was. Listening, I mean. He was at the back of the room during a session on investment structures, actually paying attention, and I noticed it because I was one of 3 people in that room doing the same thing. After, we ended up at the same coffee station. He asked me what I thought of the speaker's third point. I told him, honestly, with some critique. He didn't get defensive. He didn't try to correct me. He said, "That's a better take than I had. I'm going to think about that." Something in me exhaled. We talked for 40 minutes. I almost missed my flight. The first year was the kind of year you look back on later and understand you were being shown the best possible version of someone. Not deliberately. Or maybe it was. I'll never know for certain. But the version that shows up early and remembers small details and sends messages in the middle of the day just to say thinking of you. He was proud of me. He said it often. He told his friends about my business with a specific kind of pride, the kind that isn't possessive, that doesn't take credit, that simply holds you up for others to see. I loved him for that. I loved him whole. And then, slowly, the way all slow things happen, invisibly, in increments too small to name, things began to shift. The first red flag came dressed as a conversation about the future. "We should combine our finances," he said one evening. Casually. Over dinner. I suggested a structure, joint account for shared costs, individual accounts maintained separately, a common arrangement, a sensible one. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's a very corporate way to think about marriage." He smiled when he said it, but the smile didn't quite reach. I told myself it was just a difference in philosophy. I told myself we'd find a middle ground. We found his ground. I moved into it and told myself I'd chosen it. Then came his mother. I want to be fair. She wasn't cruel. Cruelty would have been easier to name. She was something more sophisticated than cruel. She was a woman who had spent decades perfecting the art of diminishment by compliment. "You're so driven," she'd say, with the specific inflection that made driven sound like a condition requiring management. "She keeps herself very busy," she'd tell relatives, in a tone that suggested she found this slightly sad. Once, at a family birthday, in front of 6 people, she said, "I do hope you and my son make time for each other. Careers are wonderful, but they don't keep you warm." Everyone laughed. He laughed. I smiled. I smiled and I held my wine glass and I looked at the man I was going to marry, waiting, genuinely waiting, for him to say something. He said, "Mom, stop." One word of protest, light as air, followed by more laughter. Then the conversation moved on. It always moved on. And I learned, slowly, miserably, in the way you learn things you don't want to know, that his silence in those moments was not discomfort. It was permission. The phone started facing down on the table around month 20 of the relationship. Small thing. Easy to explain. Bad habit. Everyone does it. The gym sessions started running long around month 22. He's focused on his health. This is good. Month 23. The smell. Not cologne, exactly, but the specific absence of the smell of a long day. The too clean quality of a man who has showered somewhere that wasn't home. You're imagining things. You're paranoid. You're one of those women who looks for problems. I told myself all of it. I was planning a wedding. I was choosing centerpieces and debating between 2 shades of white that looked identical to everyone except me. You don't do those things and lie, I believed. You don't. Except you do. And the Tuesday I showed up with lunch and watched him walk into that jewelry store. That was the day I stopped negotiating with what I knew. I drove home. I put the pasta in the fridge. I sat at the kitchen table. I did not cry. I want to be specific about that, not because strength means never crying, but because what happened inside me in that kitchen chair was not grief. Not yet. Grief would come later, in private, in waves, in the particular 3 a.m. darkness that no one warns you about. What happened first was clarity. Cold, clean, surgical clarity. The kind my mother had always had. The kind I had spent years developing in boardrooms and client meetings. The kind that says, strip the emotion for now. Assess what you're actually looking at. Then decide. I thought, what do I know? I knew what I had seen. I had photographs. I knew about the phone facing down. The long gym sessions. The smell. I knew. And this one settled into me slowly, like something finally taking its correct shape. About the cash withdrawals I had noticed in our shared account over the past several months. Small amounts. Regular. Nothing dramatic. The kind of thing you don't notice until you're looking for it. I was looking for it now. I opened my laptop. I went back 8 months. And there it was. Restaurants I had never been to. Hotels I had never heard him mention. A pattern of Friday afternoon withdrawals that corresponded, I noted with a kind of detached precision, with his late meetings. Months of it. Months. With money that came partly from my contributions to our shared account. Money I had deposited in good faith. Money I had put into the structure he had asked for, the combined structure, the partnership, the arrangement he had called trust. I closed the laptop. I sat with my hands flat on the table. And I thought. He thought he knew who I was. He thought he had married a woman who would push things down and smooth things over and smile through the comments and say, "You're right," when she meant "you are wrong." Because that is who I had slowly, accommodatingly become in the years of learning to live beside him. He thought I was that woman. He was 18 months out of date. I called a lawyer the next morning. Not a friend. Not a family member. A lawyer. Because that is the difference between falling apart and moving forward. Knowing what kind of call to make first. She was exactly who I needed. Sharp. Calm. She had the particular energy of someone who had seen the worst of human behavior so many times that nothing surprised her anymore. Which meant she could look at your evidence without reacting. Just assessing, cataloging, deciding what was useful. I laid everything on her desk. The photographs. Time-stamped. The bank statements. 8 months, annotated. The hotel receipt from his jacket pocket. The weekend of the work retreat. The weekend I had kissed him goodbye at the airport. I had printed everything. Organized by date. Labeled. She looked at it all for a long time. Then she looked at me. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 weeks, I said. "I've been building the file." A pause. "Most women come to me in crisis," she said. "You came with documentation." "I'm a consultant," I said. "Documentation is how I think." She almost smiled. We talked for 2 hours. About the shared accounts and what could be recovered. About the engagement, the legal standing, the things he had taken and the things that were still mine. About timing. "When do you want to move?" she asked. "There's an engagement dinner in 2 weeks," I said. "His family is hosting. Everyone will be there. His parents, his siblings, his friends, the people whose opinion he values most." She was quiet. "That's a significant choice," she said carefully. "Yes," I said. "I know." Another pause. "Are you sure?" I thought about his mother's voice at that birthday dinner. "Careers are wonderful, but they don't keep you warm." I thought about the 47 months of smiling through things. I thought about the pasta, still in my fridge, growing cold. "I'm sure," I said. She nodded once. "Then let's make sure you're ready." For 14 days, I was the perfect fiancé. I cooked his dinners. I laughed at his stories. I sat with him on the sofa on Sunday evening with my feet tucked under me and the television on, and I was present, and I was warm, and I gave him absolutely no reason to wonder. This was the hardest thing I have ever done. Not the anger. I could have handled anger. Anger has energy. Anger moves. The hardest part was the tenderness, because it wasn't entirely false. There was still something in me, bruised, bewildered, grieving, that had loved him. That memory of love sat beside my quiet fury like two people in a waiting room, neither speaking. I let them both be there. I didn't choose between them. I just waited. And I got ready. The house was beautiful that night. His parents' home, the kind built for exactly this sort of occasion. High ceilings. A long mahogany dining table set with the good china, the kind that lives in a cabinet and comes out for births and marriages, and the particular kind of family triumph that this dinner was meant to represent. Candles. Flowers. A smell of slow-cooked food that had been warming all day. 32 people. I counted them as I moved through the room, greeting each one with a warm handshake or a cheek kiss, a genuine question about how their drive was, how their children were, how they'd been. I was fully present. I was fully there. He was proud. I could see it in the way he watched me work the room. That particular pride of a man who believes the woman beside him is a reflection of him. A credit to his choices. Good, I thought. Stay comfortable. His mother greeted me in the kitchen with a careful hug and a once-over that dressed itself as affection. You look lovely, she said. Very composed. Thank you, I said warmly. You've done so much with the house tonight. She softened slightly. We moved through small talk with the ease of two women who had spent years performing civility at each other. I helped carry a dish to the table. I poured my own wine. I sat down. Dinner was long and warm and full of the particular noise of a large family that genuinely enjoyed each other. Laughter at one end, an argument about football somewhere in the middle, children being redirected by tired parents. He was relaxed. He ate well. He refilled his wine. He made a joke that made his father laugh. He put his hand over mine on the table twice. I let him. I smiled when he looked at me. The meal moved through its courses. And then, right on time, as family dinners do, a natural pause opened up. Plates cleared. A beat before dessert. The pleasant, full-bellied quiet of a table settling into itself. His uncle stood. A champagne flute raised. A smile spreading to accommodate the toast he had clearly been composing in his head since he arrived. To the happy couple, he said warmly. To love, to family, and to the life these two young people are about to build together. May it be everything they deserve. Glasses lifted. 32 people. The light catching crystal. Here, here. He turned to look at me, glass raised, eyes soft. The specific expression of a man who has no idea that the floor beneath him is about to give way. I looked back at him. I raised my glass. I held his gaze. I took one slow sip. I set the glass down. And then, into the warm quiet of that room, I said, before we continue, I'd like to say something too. The room settled immediately, the way rooms do when a woman speaks with a certain quality of calm. Something in the register. Something that isn't quite a request. His mother smiled encouragingly from across the table. He turned toward me, comfortable still, expecting sentiment, expecting sweetness, expecting the version of me he had constructed and kept in his mind. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said, about love, about what love actually looks like when you get past the idea of it, when you look at the behavior of it, the daily, private, when no one is watching behavior of it. Nods. A few appreciative murmurs. His aunt pressing her hand to her chest. I opened my purse. I removed the manila folder. I placed it on the table, and I watched his face. For a fraction of a second, one half-breath, nothing changed. Then something happened in his eyes. Not the face. Not yet. The face is a performance, and performers can hold a mask for several seconds. But the eyes. The eyes went somewhere private and very afraid. I held his gaze while I opened the folder. These are our shared bank records, I said. The last 8 months. I slid the first page forward. Calmly. The way I might present findings at a client meeting. If you look at the highlighted rows, and I've color-coded them, which I hope makes it easier, you'll see a pattern of withdrawals. Cash withdrawals, mostly. Some card purchases on a secondary account I wasn't aware of until recently. No one spoke. Not one person. The silence was so complete I could hear the candles. Restaurants. I continued, my voice even, almost clinical. Quite a few of them. Hotels. Not the kind his company books for work travel, the other kind. The kind with turn-down service and bath salts and check-in on Friday afternoons. I let that sit. 3 full seconds. Nobody moved. His father was very still at the head of the table. His mother had stopped smiling. "I want to show you something else," I said. I slid the photograph forward. Color printed. The full sheet. It moved across the tablecloth in that particular silence, the way things move when a room is holding its breath. His best friend, seated 2 chairs down, looked at it and looked away. He looked at it and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. He was in the photograph. She was in the photograph. The jewelry store was in the photograph, its name clearly visible above the entrance, and his hand was on her back, and both of them were laughing, and the timestamp in the corner read Tuesday, 2:49 p.m., 2 minutes after his text. "In a meeting, babe." I watched his mother's eyes move from the photograph to her son. I watched her process it. "And this," I said, reaching for the final document, "is a hotel receipt. A weekend receipt. For the weekend," he told me, and I believe told most of you, was a company retreat. I placed it directly in front of his mother. Not to be cruel, because she was the one who had presided over this family with such certainty about its character. Because she had spent 2 years suggesting I was the uncertainty in this equation. I thought she deserved the full picture. The silence after that was a different kind of silence. The first silence had been shock, the held breath, the sudden stillness. This silence was the aftermath, the kind where people begin to breathe again, but no one knows what to do with the air. His aunt put her champagne glass down. His brother's wife turned to look at his brother. A cousin somewhere near the end of the table was staring at the tablecloth with the intense focus of someone who desperately wanted to be invisible. His father had not moved, had not spoken, had not looked at his son. He was looking at his hands, flat on the table. The hands of a man who had spent 50 years believing something and was now conducting a very private audit. His mother said, "Is this?" She stopped. She started again. "Is this true?" Not a question, the way she said it. More like a sentence looking for somewhere to land. He opened his mouth. The room, all 32 people, every single one of them, waited. He said, "It's not what it looks like." Somewhere near the far end of the table, a chair shifted. His mother said, very quietly, "Then what does it look like?" He said nothing. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. His best friend cleared his throat. Someone's child asked for water in a small voice and was immediately, softly hushed. 15 seconds. He looked at me, and I want you to understand this. He looked at me with the expression of a man who is searching for the woman he thought he knew. The woman who would soften, who would create an exit, who had always, eventually, made things easier. He looked for her. She wasn't there. What he found instead was someone looking back at him with complete, unapologetic stillness. "It's complicated," he said, and something in the room broke. Not a sound, nothing you could point to, but something shifted, a collective internal flinch, the sound of 30 people adjusting their understanding of who they were sitting next to. His father pushed his chair back from the table. The sound of the legs on the floor. He stood. He walked out of the dining room. He didn't look at his son. He didn't say a word. He simply left the room. And somehow that, the wordless departure of a quiet man who had never once, in the years I had known him, walked away from anything, was the loudest thing that happened all evening. I waited until the room had fully absorbed it. Then I stood. I closed the folder. I placed it back in my purse, carefully, without hurry. I smoothed the front of my dress. And I spoke one final time. To the room. To no one specifically. "I want to be clear about why I chose tonight," I said. "Not from anger. I've had weeks to be angry, and I've moved through it. I chose tonight because every person in this room is being asked to celebrate something. And I believe you deserve to know what you were celebrating." I picked up my purse. I looked at his mother. She was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not in 2 years. Not once. She looked like she was recalibrating. "I genuinely wish your family well," I said to her, and I meant it. and I think she knew I meant it, which made it worse for her in some way I didn't intend but couldn't prevent. I looked at him last. I gave him 3 full seconds. Not to wound him, just to let him see me, clearly, one final time. The woman he had underestimated. The woman who had come prepared. The woman who had stood on a sidewalk holding his lunch and watched everything she thought was real rearrange itself into something true, and had, in that moment, chosen herself quietly, without theater, without asking anyone's permission. I said nothing. I turned, and I walked toward the door. 32 people. Not one of them said a word as I crossed that room. Not one. My heels on the floor. The sound of my coat being lifted from the rack near the door. The small, soft click of the latch as I pulled it open. Outside, the night was cold and clean and very quiet. I walked to my car without hurrying. I placed my purse on the passenger seat. I sat. The house was behind me, every window lit. I knew what was happening in there. I didn't need to see it. I started the engine, and as I turned out of that driveway, moving away from the light, into the ordinary dark of a regular street on a regular night, I said one thing out loud, very softly, just for myself. There she is. His texts began within the hour. By midnight, 47. By the following week, something closer to desperation, the kind that moves through denial and anger and bargaining and back to denial again, sometimes within the same message. I read every one. I responded to none. His father called me, not to mediate, not to apologize on his son's behalf. He called to say one thing. I'm sorry you were in that house for 2 years, and we didn't see you properly. That was all. I thanked him. I meant it. His best friend lost 2 relationships, 2 people who had been in that dining room, and could not reconcile what they now knew with what they had been asked to pretend they didn't know for months. The covering up, people decided, was its own betrayal. It usually is. His mother called 6 weeks later. I almost didn't pick up. I did. She was quiet for a moment on the line before she said, I owe you an accounting. She talked for a while. About what she had told herself about me. About the way she had made it easier, over the years, for her son to avoid the harder version of himself. About the particular pride of a mother who had mistaken protection for honesty. She didn't call it an apology, but it had the shape of one. I listened to the whole thing. Then I said, I hope you're all okay. And I hung up, and I sat with the phone in my hands for a long, quiet moment. And I felt, not triumph, not satisfaction exactly, something simpler. Relief. The specific, bone-deep relief of a woman who finally put down something very heavy she had been carrying for a very long time. My lawyer was excellent. The accounts, a battle, a documented, well-prepared, methodically supported battle that lasted several months and landed in approximately the right place. Not everything. Enough. Enough to deposit the first month's rent on an apartment on the east side of the city. Small. Quiet. On the 4th floor, with a window that caught the morning light in a way the other place never had. I painted the bedroom terracotta, a warm, deep, deliberate color. I bought plants, then more plants, then a cat who arrived small and opinionated and immediately claimed the warmest corner of the sofa as her own, which seemed fair. My business had been quietly restructured during those 3 weeks of preparation. Contingency clauses adjusted, client contracts reviewed, certain financial entanglements cleanly separated. When the dust settled, I was leaner, more intentional, more mine. New clients arrived, not loudly, through the network, through people who had heard, in the particular, careful way things travel through professional communities, the shape of what had happened and who had handled it, and decided, without being asked, that they wanted to work with her. When people witness dignity under pressure, they are drawn to it. I have always believed that. Now I had evidence. 8 months later, Saturday morning. The market 2 streets down is already setting up. I can hear the first vendors arriving, the roll of cart wheels, someone testing a speaker with a burst of music that cuts out after 3 seconds. The cat is doing slow circles around my coffee mug, which she knows she's not allowed near and does not care. The morning light is coming through the east window exactly the way I hoped it would when I signed the lease. My phone buzzes. My closest friend. Breakfast. I'm already dressed. 2 minutes. I type. I put on my coat. I pick up my keys. At the door, I pause. There's a mirror in the entryway, small, oval, in a frame I found at the market 3 Saturdays ago. Nothing expensive. Something I chose because I liked the shape of it. I look at the woman in the mirror. She's tired still. Not the desperate, performing, managing kind of tired. The honest kind. The kind that comes after a long walk that went somewhere real. Her eyes are clear. Her face is her own. Not arranged. Not managed. Just hers. I nod at her, small, private, between us, and I open the door. The morning comes in. Cool. Light. Unhurried. I step out into it. She didn't fight. She didn't beg. She didn't perform her pain for anyone's sympathy. She gathered her evidence. She found her footing, and she waited, not from weakness, but from the specific, disciplined patience of a woman who understood that the most powerful thing she could do was be ready. The moment they underestimated her was the moment they lost. Not because she was ruthless, because she was prepared. And here is what I want to leave you with. The dining room that night was full of people who had spent years forming an opinion of her. The quiet one. The one who smiled through the comments. The one who compromised when she should have held. The one his mother called independent like it was a polite word for difficult. They had an opinion of her. She walked in that night, and she changed it. Quietly, without raising her voice. With a folder and a steady hand and the absolute, unshakable knowledge of exactly who she was and exactly what she had built. And exactly what she was worth. She didn't win by fighting. She won by knowing. If this story reached something in you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear it today. And if you've ever been the person standing on that sidewalk, holding something you made with love, watching through the glass, drop a comment. Just the word. Standing. I'll know what you mean. Subscribe. Because the next story is the one you won't see coming. And if you watched all the way to here, you're exactly the kind of person I make these for.